When you check the ingredient label, you can quickly identify the chemicals that are in the food. And you can ask yourself, is that something that I want to put into my body that could potentially cause oxidative stress and shorten my longevity? Then you can decide how you want to answer that question. The first thing I want to say is that there are many, many factors that contribute to longevity, which is really how long you're going to live. So let me just kind of walk through some of those factors. Number one, there's genetics. All right. Then there's the lifetime of exposures that you've actually had to harmful substances in the environment. Do you remember when you were a kid waiting for a bus or standing at a bus stop, and then that bus pulled away and belched some diesel fumes right into your face, right? I do. That's an exposure. And then there's whether or not you actually have a disease or multiple diseases that can actually erode your health or health defenses. There's medications that you might be taking to help treat one condition, which might be beneficial, but the medications could have side effects that can have consequences for how long you live as well. All right. And then there is the amount of risks that you take in your life that can affect your longevity. Do you skydive? Do you base jump? Do you do free solo climbing? Do you cave dive? Or maybe you just drive really fast on the highway, right? These are all risks. And then there's sort of the pure luck of the draw, avoiding accidents, for example. Like you just happen not to be the person that the other guy coming down the road is actually going to hit. So I'm actually telling you this because there's a lot of things that can actually affect longevity. But we do know that diet and lifestyle play a huge role on whether you optimize the chances you're going to live a long time. Now, we're going to talk about the foods, but I want to talk a little bit about lifestyle too. If you, for example, are sedentary and you don't move a lot, don't exercise a lot, and you lose muscle mass, that actually compromises your chances of longevity. If you smoke cigarettes, really, really bad for your longevity. And by the way, it's not just cigarettes, really tobacco use. So some of the chemicals in tobacco, whether you inhale it or keep it in your jowl, has negative effects in your body. And vaping actually is also really harmful. It turns out years later that vaping can actually compromise your ability to live a long time. Other things that can actually, lifestyle-wise, if you don't get good quality sleep, sleep's actually quite important for longevity and brain health. And that can actually compromise you as well. So, point is, there's a lot of things that can affect longevity, and obviously diet is one of them. Now, I'm actually doing research on longevity right now, so this is an area that I'm actually diving into. I can tell you it's quite complicated. The good news is that there are actually some foods that you can eat that actually improve your longevity. I'm not going to talk about it on this video, but I will make a video in the future that are actually going to identify what those foods are and how much you should eat. Okay, but for this video, let's talk about some of the foods that can shorten your life or compromise your longevity. All right. First food I want to point out are ultra-processed foods, UPFs. Now, UPFs, ultra-processed foods, are being talked about a lot. One of the things that is conclusive, really, from all the research that's been done, medical research that's been done, is that eating a lot of ultra-processed foods is harmful to your health. And it actually is correlated with lower longevity, okay? Less longevity. Now, it's really hard to avoid ultra-processed foods. You know, it's one of the things that most of us grew up with, you know. And by the way, ultra-processed foods were kind of invented as one of the big advances in the 1950s by the food industry. They made food tasty, cheap, and convenient. Like, what's better than that, right? So, you know, after World War II, society was becoming more prosperous and food was becoming more widely available. So how do you actually get lots of food out? Make it cheap, make it tasty, and make it super convenient. And this actually led to this revolution at the time, an innovation at the time, that was called ultra-processed foods. So this revolution thought to help to solve hunger, democratize nutrition, And at that time, by the way, nutrition was really just macros like proteins and fats and carbs. But ultra processed food is basically using factories to machine and package foods that food chemists engineer to be tasty and taste really, really great. And adding synthetic materials to it, like preservatives that would help the products last longer on the shelf, or both in the grocery store and also at home, right? That was considered an incredible innovation at one point. And then, of course, there's flavorings that get put in there. A lot of the flavorings are artificial flavorings. You see this a lot in ultra-processed foods. You know, it's really hard to know what those artificial flavorings are, or artificial colors, right? These dyes that actually make their way into foods. So flavorings, coloring, and preservatives, these are all additives that are put in there. Stabilizers, anti-caking, all kinds of emulsifiers, thickeners, all kinds of things that are added by the companies that are making these manufactured foods. This was considered a big innovation, but those are all ultra-processed foods. Chips in a bag or in a tennis can like thing, you know, those stackable potato chips that all look exactly the same. An interesting story behind that. And another form of ultra-processed food that was once considered a huge innovation in the 1970s is an entire meal. Many of you may not remember this, but TV dinners were really in a foil tray, and you just pop the whole thing in the oven. Later, they put them in plastic, and you stuck them in the microwave, and you know, within seconds, minutes, you actually had a piping hot, complete meal. Well, listen, that's not fresh cooked, and in order to make it taste great, additives were put in there to stabilize it, to make it cheaper. They skimped on some of the ingredients, but it did taste good. All right, and you know, these are innovations that led to the creation of ultra-processed food. You see them everywhere. If you take a road trip and you stop by the gas station, you know, you fill up your tank and then you go into the gas station, into the store, and you see all the stuff hanging, that's all ultra-processed foods. If you're at the airport and you're on your way walking to the gate with your luggage and you stop by the news stand and you go in there and it's all, you know, shelves and rows and displays filled with ultra-processed foods. That's what I'm talking about, all right? Now, here's the problem. It turns out that ultra-processed foods are associated with the development of chronic diseases. They actually increase your risk of developing chronic diseases that can shorten your life. That's actually something why you want to avoid ultra-processed foods. So what are some of the conditions that ultra-processed foods are linked to? Well, UPFs actually increase our risk for cardiovascular disease, for multiple types of cancer, for type 2 diabetes, and all the consequences of diabetes, metabolic problems, vision problems, kidney problems, vascular problems, blood vessel problems. Ultra-processed foods are associated with a higher risk of obesity and a higher risk of dementia as well. So regardless of how long you live, you actually want to be able to have a sharp brain, right? So you don't want to actually have dementia and live a long time with like really severe dementia. Well, look, ultra-processed food, is eating it, actually is attached to, connected to increase in risk for all of these. Now, we don't know the exact reason, the exact mechanism that ultra-processed foods cause these health problems. But what is true is that artificial preservatives and artificial flavors, these can all, and colors, they can all cause oxidative stress to our healthy cells. This can also damage DNA. And when you damage your DNA, okay, this speeds up the process of cellular aging. All right, so you want to live a long time. You don't want to speed up your aging. You want to, if anything, slow it down. All right, I'm not talking about anti-aging. I'm just talking about not speeding up the process of aging. All right, check this out. I've got a free guide on my favorite breakfast foods to eat for longevity. From what's in my mug to what I look for when I buy these staples at the grocery store. It's all right here. All you have to do is click on the link and enjoy. Now, ultra-processed foods also often contain synthetic sweeteners that give your brain that sweet hit, or thickeners, emulsifiers. They give you mouthfeel, things that make the food appealing in some way, shape, or form? Well, these artificial sweeteners, for example, and some of the emulsifiers, the thickeners, have now been shown to damage your gut microbiome. Now, your gut microbiome are the 36 trillion healthy bacteria that live in your gut, in your colon, specifically an area called the cecum, C-E-C-U-M, is right where the appendix actually is. Most of them live there. And these healthy bacteria are really, really important for your overall health and longevity because they help to improve your immunity, your immune defenses. They help keep your body sensitive to insulin, so they fight insulin resistance. They help manage your blood glucose level. They make your blood glucose very efficient. They lower inflammation. They prompt faster healing inside your body. And ultra-processed foods, eating them actually damages this gut microbiome and therefore damages this protective effect of your microbiome, of your healthy gut bacteria. You're damaging it. So, as a result of eating ultra-processed food, you can develop chronic inflammation. Now, that's a setup for almost every significant serious disease that can shorten your longevity, all right? And damaging your gut microbiome can lower your immune defenses. They can make you more vulnerable to bacteria and viruses. These are invaders outside of the body. And a lower immunity internally can also make you more vulnerable to cancer because your immune system conducts surveillance all day long, looking for tiny little microscopic cancers, and they find something abnormal. They just take them right out, all right? But when you actually have damage to your gut microbiome and you lower your immunity, all right, now these defenses, this gut microbiome function isn't working the right way. So you wind up actually becoming more vulnerable to invaders from the outside and the inside of your body. Now, ultra-processed foods also often contain artificial coloring. Now, some of these have actually been associated with cancer development and are banned in some countries, still used in ultra-processed foods available in other countries as well. Now, on top of all this badness, ultra-processed foods are often packaged in plastic, right? And now we know that plastic wrapping around food or foods, that are sold in plastic, those plastics can shed microplastic particles into the food or the beverages. We know that this is the problem because you can now find microplastics in our bloodstream. And we also know that microplastics inside our body can stick to our blood vessels. And in fact, when the blood vessels start to get narrow, right, this is an atherosclerosis, clinicians, cardiologists, and neurologists have actually been able to find plastic particles embedded in the plaques that narrow our blood vessels, all right? And in fact, a study from Italy showed that if somebody has narrowing of their blood vessels and they've got microplastics studding it, it increases the risk of having a fatal heart attack or stroke by 4-fold, all right? Significant, all right? Microplastics are a big problem. We also know that microplastics accumulate in our brain. In fact, you can measure it on a scale how much plastic actually accumulates. Researchers have also found microplastics in the testicles, in human semen, and also in the human penis as well. So this microplastic issue, where food is ultra-processed foods are packaged in plastic, another reason that it's not good for your overall health. All right. So what's the solution to all of this? Look, what I'm trying to tell you is eat less ultra-processed foods. It's very hard to avoid all of it, all right? We're all human, all right? We're going to be eating some of this stuff just because. But if you know that it's not good for you and it actually shortens your longevity, you're going to be probably less likely to eat it all the time, all right? So here's what I'm telling you. When you go to the grocery store, focus on buying fresh produce. Frozen's okay too, all right? But hopefully not packaged in plastic, which a lot of frozen foods are. All right, get fresh produce, fresh meats, and dairy if you eat those. Avoid things that are manufactured if you can. Anything in a factory or packaged up, okay, in a box, in a bag, in a jar, in a can. If you can avoid the things that have been made in a factory, you're cutting down your ultra-processed foods. Another little tip for you is I think buy ingredients rather than finished foods. Right? So just buy the raw ingredients and then make it yourself. That way you can control everything that you're putting in your body. You know everything that's in there. And if you do buy something that's prepackaged, please check the ingredient label. And you want to look for the chemicals that you don't want in your body, right? You can do whatever you want, right? We live in a free country. But when you check the ingredient label, you can quickly identify the chemicals that are in the food. And you can ask yourself, is that something that I want to put into my body that could potentially cause oxidative stress and shorten my longevity? Then you can decide how you want to answer that question, all right? So basically, if you want longevity, eat more of the good stuff, polyphenol foods, whole foods with polyphenols, a lot of dietary fiber in order to actually, boost your health defenses. That's what I write about in my book, Eat to Beat Disease, right here. How to actually shore up your health defenses with whole foods and eat less of the bad stuff, right? The synthetic chemicals, the additives, the thickeners, these chemically modified foods, all right? What was once an innovation decades ago, they're now considered a health hazard. So we're going to eat it every now and then, but cut it down if you can't cut it out altogether, all right? And check the ingredient label so you're always looking for the problem. More of the good stuff means less of the bad stuff. And your health is going to thank you and give you more longevity, all right? So cut down ultra-processed foods if you want to live long. Processed meats from the deli. Now, I got to give you a little background here because we all grew up with eating processed meats, probably. At least you're familiar with it. If you've ever had deli food, been to the deli, had a school lunch packed for you, maybe by your mom or on the lunch line, you've probably eaten salami, bologna, ham, pressed turkey, a number of these processed lunch meats, all right? Well, it turns out that processed meats are not a healthy choice. They're high in salt, all right? That leads to hypertension, high blood pressure, which leads to a number of harmful consequences, including cardiovascular disease, increased risk for stroke. It also puts us at risk for kidney disease, which is that's the most common cause, hypertension, for kidney damage. Once you have kidney damage, and I made a video about kidney damage, you should check it out. Once you have kidney damage, you wind up having all kinds of problems downstream. Kidney damage is kind of like a domino that you tip over on one side, and all these other dominoes start to fall from your metabolism to your heart to your brain. Leads to all kinds of other terrible problems. But high salt foods like processed meats, not good for your health. The other thing is that processed meats often contain additives. These additives are preservatives. They could be artificial coloring, sometimes artificial flavoring, and there's fillers that are often found in these foods that you frankly don't want in your body. Now, one thing that you probably don't know about processed meats that you should know about is that, have you heard of meat glue? Meat glue, all right? What is meat glue? Well, meat glue was invented in the last century, and that's what allowed processed meat manufacturers to assemble bits and pieces of cheap remnant meats from the slaughterhouse or from other meat processing plants, and they'd be able to put them together into something that looks like a coherent whole. And then they grind the meat bits into a fine paste and use meat glue to be able to mold it together. Now, meat glue was made by the military. They're actually trying to create foods, rations for soldiers, but you got to glue things all together and make it look like whatever you want. So, for example, in the deli, if you take a look at the deli counter, they have processed meats that are in perfectly round cylinders, right? I mean, these are like cylinders of meat that they actually put onto the slicer, and they slice these perfectly round, thin sheets like bologna, like salami, like turkey. Well, look, you know what a pork looks like, a pig looks like. You know what a turkey looks like. Does a turkey look anything like a cylinder? Nope. Here's the actual reveal. Those, like deli turkey, all right, that comes in a round sheet, the slices, that's actually the leftover bits of turkey, all right, whatever they can scrap together. They grind it up into a fine paste, and then they add meat glue to it, all right? And that with that meat glue, they can mold it into the shape of that cylinder, firms it up, and now you can slice it, all right? That is what's deli turkey. That's the healthy, choice that we all grew up thinking that eating turkey is healthier. Nope, not true at all. I also know that they have like the cylinder chicken. And what makes you think that the ham actually comes out exactly like a square? It doesn't, all right? So basically, meat sawdust held together by meat glue, that is actually one of the things that you can expect is going to actually have additives and other chemicals that you don't want to have in it. Now, processed and cured meats have also been designated a class 1 carcinogen by the World Health Organization, which means that there's sufficient evidence that they can actually cause cancer in humans, especially colorectal cancer. Now, that makes sense because you're eating this processed meat, it's going down, you're actually exposing your gut, your lower gut, to a lot of the toxins that could be produced from this meat. Now, processed meats also contain a lot of saturated fat. And while there's controversy about just how bad saturated fat is, we do know that there is enough evidence to suggest it's not good for cardiovascular health. All right. And saturated fats are not as good as mono or polyunsaturated fatty acids like you would get in extra virgin olive oil or seafood with healthy omega-3s. All right. And eating a lot of processed meats has been linked to a higher risk of obesity. So that's gaining extra body fat, cardiovascular disease. But what about dementia? How does that work out? Well, researchers looked at data recently at the Alzheimer's Association International Conference. And there was a study that looked at 130,000 people. And these were individuals that were in a big research group called the Nurses Health Study, and people that were also in, those were women. And they were looking at men from the health professionals follow-up study. So this is a group of women, this is a group of men, 130,000 people altogether. And what they found was that there was a clear connection between eating processed meats, like deli meats, and Alzheimer's disease. In fact, what they found was that eating just 2 servings of processed meat each week increased the risk of developing dementia, Alzheimer's disease, by 14%. Just 2 servings of processed meats increased your risk by 14%. Okay, so what is the solution to eating processed meat? Well, look, I mean, it's pretty easy to actually stay away from processed meat if you don't buy it and you don't eat it if it's offered to you. But here's a good swap out. And this is actually something that I do myself. Rather than have deli meats in your fridge, you could actually buy tinned seafood, tinned fish for a quick lunch, right? Deli meats are quick and convenient. Well, what about a tinned fish? Now, tinned seafood, tinned fish, sardines, anchovies, mackerel, tuna, absolutely delicious. You can also get squid, you get octopus. These tinned fish or seafood are called conservas in Spain. It is considered a delicacy. And you can get protein from the seafood plus the healthy omega-3. So you're getting healthy fat, not saturated fat, and you're actually getting good protein, all right? None of the additives, all right? And basically, don't forget, omega-3s actually lower your buildup of body fat, so they improve your metabolism. Omega-3s also lower your risk of dementia and cardiovascular diseases as well. So, you get a winning combination if you actually swap out your deli meats and swap in conservas or tinned fish. So where do you actually find these tins? If you go to a specialty store, a place that would actually sell imported from Europe, you'll often find conservas. But even in a regular grocery store, if you go into the middle aisle, now I know a lot of people say don't shop in the middle aisle. I tell people to go into the middle aisle, but look for very, very specific healthy things. Go to the section that sells tinned fish, like tuna fish. Ask somebody, where's the tuna fish section? They'll point you right into that section. Ignore the tuna fish for a moment, all right? Tuna is not that great a food to eat because it can actually contain mercury. If you want to actually have low mercury tuna, the kind of canned tuna you want to have is made with skipjack tuna, has virtually no mercury in it. Skipjack tuna would be the kind you want to get. But in that same section, you'll often find these other types of tinned fish. Mackerel, you think it tastes fishy? No, it doesn't. Actually, it tastes absolutely delicious. So if you want to actually swap out your deli meats and swap in conservas, tinned seafood, that's a way that you can actually get away from the salt, get away from the saturated fat, get away from the artificial additives that are actually placed in these processed meats that can actually cause weight gain associated with cancer, processed meats, and increases the risk of Alzheimer's disease. And you can swap in these tinned fish, traditional type of quick eating food, packed in extra virgin olive oil with some spices and herbs. Actually really, really delicious. And now you get a good source of protein, which is seafood, with healthy omega-3 fatty acids, all right, which have been shown to lower weight gain, help to fight body fat, which has been shown to decrease the risk of certain cancers and also decrease the risk of dementia. So completely the opposite direction from the processed meats. And if it's an extra virgin olive oil, you can also get the healthy polyphenols from hydroxytyrosol, oleocanthal. It's also an extra virgin olive oil, right? Little trick to dodge the harm of deli meats. All right. The next food I want to talk to you about that's high risk. And again, I'm going to tell you I'll give you a solution to swap it out. But another food is candy bars. All right. Candy is a confection made in a factory, combines lots of ingredients together, mostly sugar, but then you've got all kinds of fats and maybe some chocolate. Might not be good quality chocolate. It might not be heavy cacao. And then all kinds of additives, emulsifiers, thickeners, stabilizers, preservatives, artificial coloring, artificial flavoring, all that kind of stuff. All right. And we've loved it as kids. We didn't give a second thought to it when we were kids eating a candy bar. All right. Like if you've ever gone trick-or-treating for Halloween, you know, get a big pillow sack full of candy and you eat it. It looks great, tastes great, but incredibly unhealthy as a snack. All right. And here's why. Besides being loaded with added sugar, right? That's candy, it's sugar. All right. And sugar can be hazardous to your metabolism. You know, I would dare say that you probably don't eat a ton of candy bars. Very few people do that. All right. But even when you reach to pick one up, you should realize that's going to be a big carb load to you because of the sugar alone. All right. Kind of like soda. But the key thing is that beyond the sugar, you actually are having all these other additives that can damage your gut microbiome. In fact, some of these emulsifiers that thicken the candy bar, you know, they give you the nougat, they give you the stuff that holds that candy bar together. These emulsifiers have been shown to damage your gut microbiome. This is the 39 trillion healthy gut bacteria that normally lives in your lower gut near your colon that lowers inflammation. That's what they normally do. You damage that, inflammation goes up. You don't want that. All right. And by the way, when you damage your gut microbiome, healthy gut bacteria normally helps insulin sensitivity, helps you pull that glucose out of your blood and put it into your cells and store it away in your body fat where it belongs. If you actually damage your gut microbiome, you derail your insulin sensitivity. Now your metabolism is off whack. All right. And it's going to be harder to actually lose weight. The other thing is that many of these additives have carcinogenic potential, and eating a lot of candy, eating a huge amount of ultra processed sweets linked to an increased risk of dementia as well. All right, so these are the candy bars are sort of a poor choice. They actually can increase your risk for all kinds of chronic diseases, metabolic diseases, cancer, and dementia. So it kind of degrades your health. Now, so what do you do about that? Like first of all, if you want to eat a candy bar once in a while, go for it. Just try to choose something healthy, and don't eat the whole thing. No one told you to eat the whole thing. But what you want to do is make a knowledgeable choice, really recognizing that's not going to be good for you. Here's what the choice that I would recommend instead. Rather than a candy bar, make your own snack. You want to make a really healthy snack? Just kind of like how I told you, you swap out processed meats for, tinned seafood. You want to swap out candy bars for make your own trail mix. All right. So here's how you do it. You go buy some bulk nuts, tree nuts. So whatever your favorite ones are, cashews, pistachios, almonds, whatever you have. All right, and you get them, and you can buy some of your favorite dried fruits as well. Okay, ideally get organic dried fruits because you're not going to be able to wash them, right? Because they're already dried. But things like dried organic cherries or dried organic blueberries or dried cranberries, organic cranberries are great choices. By the way, these types of dried fruits contain ellagic acid. They contain bioactives like anthocyanins, other bioactives that are beneficial for your gut microbiome, beneficial for improving your metabolism, burning down harmful body fat. Ellagic acid, anthocyanins, for example, cut off the blood supply, feeding cancer, so they're cancer protective. And actually, the dietary fiber can lower the risk of these dried fruits, can actually lower, and nuts can lower the risk of developing dementia as well. Plus, tree nuts contain healthy fats, and the fiber of tree nuts is good for the gut microbiome. All right, so take your tree nuts. If you want to roast them slightly, you can roast them on a cast iron pan. Just heat it up, heat the pan up on the range, just toast them a little bit. All right, you can just smell the nuts when they actually start to warm up. Don't burn them, but just roast them lightly until they smell nice, then cool them off. And take these other dried fruits, all right, and most of them are small enough, but you could cut them a little bit if you want to chop them up finer, and then mix them together with the nuts, right? And store them in an airtight container. And now you actually have a fantastic, healthy alternative to a candy bar that's going to actually lower your risk of metabolic disease, weight gain. It's going to lower your risk of cancer and lower your risk of Alzheimer's dementia as well. Convenience store snacks like chips, right? So who hasn't actually been in an airport and while you're waiting for your flight, you walk by the newsstand and look at all those snacks there, right? That's a convenience store. Or maybe you were filling up your car with gas. You stopped at a gas station on a road trip and you go inside to pay and look at all those snacks. You go for some coffee and there's a ton of snacks there and you feel tempted to go pick one of those things up. All right. Snack foods, we all grew up with it. Potato chips, corn chips, Cheetos, all that kind of stuff, right? Probably things that you started eating when you were a kid. Maybe you don't eat them as much now, but here, like now you kind of maybe feel like you don't want to buy them as much. But a lot of chips are deep fried. The deep frying is not in good quality oil. And deep fried snacks, like those pork skins or French fries or potato chips, the deep frying causes the formation of chemicals because of the frying method called acrylamides, acrylamides, acrylamides on the foods themselves. And in the lab, these acrylamides are powerful carcinogens. They actually cause cancer in lab animals, all right? So you don't want to do that. Chips also contain a lot of salt. Chips also can contain saturated fats, bad for your metabolism. The acrylamides increase your cancer risk. The high sodium increases your blood pressure, and overall ultra-processed foods, like the kind of chips that you're getting, increases your risk of dementia as well. Now, eating a couple of chips every now and then, it's not going to hurt you badly. You're going to bounce back from that. But very rarely do people buy a bag of chips and just eat one or two of them, right? You devour the bag, and if you're flying on an airplane and the flight attendant offers you some free stuff, a lot of times there's chips there. And are you going to eat just one or two? Nope, you're going to devour the whole bag. If you do that regularly, you're going to be actually putting a lot of these harmful acrylamides and saturated fats, high salt, and there might be artificial preservatives and coloring and flavorings in this. All of this adds up to be not so good. And the chips are a source of calories. One bag of chips contain about half the calories you're supposed to consume the entire day. All right. And by the way, the chips do not have those healthy bioactives and dietary fiber. So, bag of chips kind of are empty calories as well. All right. Not as bad as the soda, but kind of in the same direction. All right. So what's a good swap for bag of potato chips? Again, I'm going to come back to my favorite, which is, some tree nuts as a snack. All right. They're filling. They actually can satiate you, so you're less likely to overeat the next meal. They have a little bit of crunch. All right, so maybe not crispy, but they have a little bit of crunch. They can, and tree nuts can actually be savory too. They can have a savory, salty flavor. But if you're going to actually get, and they have good sorts of protein, and they've got dietary fiber, some healthy fats as well. But if you are going to get in a convenience store and buy a bag of tree nuts, I am going to give you a caution. A lot of the kind of most appealing tree nuts, they're going to be barbecue flavor. They're going to actually have Thai chili flavor, or there's some other flavoring to them, ranch dressing flavor. Please, those flavorings are usually loaded with artificial additives. So pick up those bags. I'd avoid them altogether, but if you want to take a look, pick one of those things up, look at the ingredient label, and see if there are chemical names. Sounds like those ingredients belong in a chemistry lab. That's an ultra processed food. Put it back. Look for something plain, plain, simple, roasted nuts. That's actually tree nuts. That's actually what's going to be a lot better for you as a swap. All right. So my little tip there. Hope you learned something new from this video. Thanks very much for watching, and see you on the next video. Dr. Lee out. Hi there. If you enjoyed watching this video, I know you'll love the next one. Stay here and check it out, and I'll see you there.